If you bought a motorcycle in the last decade, you missed the most important maintenance secret that could have saved you thousands. You're part of a much bigger story. Right now, while American riders are replacing engines every 50,000 miles, Japanese mechanics are routinely seeing bikes hit 300,000 plus miles with original components. Honda's internal training documents reveal a maintenance protocol they've used since 1973, but never marketed globally. The data shows motorcycles following this method last 6 times longer than industry averages. This happened because Japanese manufacturers built reliability systems around a single overlooked principle that Western mechanics dismiss as unnecessary. We're talking about a 15-minute procedure that costs under $20, but prevents 90% of catastrophic engine failures. So if you own any motorcycle, this changes your entire maintenance approach. Here's the Japanese trick that motorcycle manufacturers don't want you to know. But before we start, hit subscribe if you want your bike to outlast your mortgage. And tell me in the comments, what's the highest mileage you've seen on a motorcycle? The story begins in post-World War II Japan. With limited resources and a devastated economy, Japanese manufacturers couldn't compete on luxury or raw power. Instead, they turned necessity into innovation, focusing on creating machines that would simply last longer than anything else on the market. Honda's 1958 Super Cub became the perfect example of this philosophy. While American and British companies were designing motorcycles with planned obsolescence, Honda engineered the Super Cub to run virtually forever with minimal maintenance. This wasn't marketing hype, it was engineering reality. The Super Cub would go on to become the most produced motor vehicle in human history, with over 100 million units manufactured. This wasn't just Honda either. The entire Japanese motorcycle industry adopted principles similar to the Toyota production system: continuous improvement over planned obsolescence. While Triumph and Harley-Davidson were building machines that looked impressive in showrooms, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Honda were designing engines that could run for decades. By 1980, the results spoke for themselves. Japanese manufacturers controlled an astonishing 85% of the global motorcycle market. Honda alone was producing 3 million motorcycles annually, while Harley-Davidson filed for bankruptcy protection. The reputation for reliability had created an empire. Japanese engineering became synonymous with longevity across all industries. Cars, electronics, tools. If it was made in Japan, consumers expected it to last. The establishment of Japanese Industrial Standards, JYS, created manufacturing protocols that prioritized durability over profit margins. Every fastener, every bearing, every component was engineered not just to meet standards, but to exceed them by ridiculous margins. The success was so complete that by the mid-1980s, a 30-year-old Japanese motorcycle was more likely to be running than a 5-year-old British or American bike. This wasn't by accident. It was the result of deliberate engineering choices and maintenance philosophies that were radically different from Western approaches. But market forces began to shift. Western consumers, particularly Americans, started demanding more performance and lower prices. The market was becoming increasingly competitive, and Japanese manufacturers felt pressure to cut engineering corners to meet these new demands. The rise of planned obsolescence as an acceptable business practice in the 1990s automotive industry didn't help. European luxury brands began positioning their exotic engineering as superior to boring Japanese reliability. Marketing departments gained influence over engineering decisions. The American market, in particular, seemed to prefer style and marketing over maintenance-free operation. The numbers told a disturbing story. The average motorcycle lifespan dropped from 150,000 miles in 1985 to just 60,000 miles by 2010. Warranty periods shortened, while repair costs increased by 300% over 2 decades. Japanese manufacturers found themselves pressured to match European performance specs rather than exceed durability standards. Consumer surveys revealed a troubling shift. Riders were now prioritizing horsepower, styling, and features over longevity in their purchasing decisions. The market was speaking, and reliability was no longer the primary selling point. Motorcycles were becoming fashion statements rather than transportation investments. This created an impossible dilemma for Japanese manufacturers. Continue building bikes to last 30 years, or compete on Western terms with flashier, higher performance machines that might not last as long but would sell better in showrooms? The decision they ultimately made would transform the industry forever, and not necessarily for the better. Facing increased competition and changing consumer preferences, Japanese motorcycle manufacturers made what many longtime engineers within their companies considered a fatal compromise. They decided to compete on Western terms, prioritizing performance, features, and profit margins over their traditional engineering excellence. This meant adopting good enough tolerance standards to match European pricing while maintaining market share. Components that were once over-engineered to last indefinitely were now designed merely to meet minimum warranty requirements. For the first time in company histories, marketing departments began overruling engineering teams on crucial design decisions. The changes were subtle but profound. Japanese manufacturers introduced recycled aluminum alloys in engine castings to reduce material costs. They standardized Phillips head screws instead of JIS fasteners to appeal to Western mechanics, despite the fact that Phillips screws were more prone to stripping under high torque. Cooling systems were optimized for highway speeds rather than the more demanding stop-and-go traffic conditions that actually cause most overheating failures. Break-in procedures were simplified for dealer convenience rather than optimal engine longevity. The traditional Japanese method called for careful break-in oil changes at 50, 200, and 600 miles, a protocol developed through decades of metallurgical research. This was replaced with a single 600-mile service to match Western expectations. Perhaps most significantly, valve clearance inspection intervals were extended from 15,000 to 26,000 plus miles to reduce the perceived maintenance burden. Engineers protested this change, knowing it would lead to premature valve seat wear and potential catastrophic failure, but marketing prevailed. The goal was to promote these bikes as low maintenance, compared to their European competitors, even if that meant sacrificing long-term durability. These weren't just minor adjustments, they represented a fundamental shift in philosophy. Japanese manufacturers had built their empire on the principle that maintenance should be infrequent but crucial. Now they were adopting the Western approach: minimal maintenance until something breaks, then replace it. The reaction was slow at first, but by the mid-2000s, the consequences of these changes became impossible to ignore. Longtime Japanese bike owners began reporting premature engine failures for the first time in brand history. Independent mechanics discovered stripped fasteners and loose components on newer models with alarming frequency. Motorcycle forums documented a systematic reliability decline across all Japanese manufacturers. Posts with titles like "My 2008 CBR with terminal engine failure at 40,000 miles" or "Ninja 650 needing complete rebuild at 35,000" became commonplace, something that would have been unthinkable with 1990s models. European brands seized the opportunity, gaining market credibility by highlighting these Japanese quality compromises. Ducati and BMW, once considered maintenance-intensive alternatives to reliable Japanese bikes, could now position themselves as premium options, without the reliability gap that had previously existed. The statistics painted a devastating picture. Engine rebuild rates increased 400% on post-2005 Japanese motorcycles compared to 1990s models. Warranty claims rose 250% despite shorter coverage periods. Customer satisfaction scores dropped from industry-leading to middle-of-pack within 5 years. Perhaps most telling was the collapse in resale values. Japanese motorcycles had historically maintained excellent resale value due to their reputation for longevity. Now, 3-year-old Japanese bikes were depreciating at nearly twice the rate of their 1990s predecessors. The market was responding to a new reality. These weren't the same bulletproof machines that had built the Japanese reputation. Mechanics who had specialized in Japanese bikes for decades found themselves dealing with problems they'd never encountered before. One master technician with 35 years of experience servicing Hondas told an industry publication, "I used to recommend these bikes because they'd run forever if you followed the maintenance schedule. Now I'm seeing catastrophic failures that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago." By 2015, the financial impact was staggering. Japanese manufacturers were losing an estimated $2.3 billion annually in warranty claims and reputation damage. Their collective market share had declined from 85% to 62% as European and American brands gained credibility. Research and development budgets that had once focused on durability engineering were redirected toward marketing and damage control. Stock prices underperformed automotive sector averages for the first time since the 1960s. Shareholders demanded answers, and executives scrambled to address the escalating crisis. The leadership response varied by company, but revealed the depth of the problem. Honda's CEO made a remarkable public admission that the company had lost its way in pursuit of market share over engineering excellence. Yamaha announced a return to original tolerance specifications on flagship models despite increased production costs. Suzuki implemented a heritage engineering program specifically designed to restore 1990s durability standards. Kawasaki established a separate longevity division focused exclusively on developing components capable of lasting 300,000 plus miles. But the damage extended beyond financial metrics and public relations. The companies experienced significant personnel changes that compounded the problem. The mass retirement of original engineering teams who had built the Japanese reputation for reliability created a knowledge vacuum. These engineers were replaced with Western MBA executives who prioritized quarterly profits over generational durability. This led to a devastating loss of institutional knowledge. The craftsman engineers who understood the intricate balance of metallurgy, tolerances, and maintenance protocols that made Japanese motorcycles legendary were replaced by cost optimization specialists with little connection to the engineering heritage that had built these companies. One retired Suzuki engineer, speaking anonymously to a trade journal, summarized the situation. "We built our reputation on bikes that would run for 300,000 kilometers with basic maintenance. Now the company designs for 100,000 kilometers and calls it progress. This isn't progress. It's surrender." The deterioration in Japanese motorcycle reliability can be traced to three specific technical compromises that transformed world-class machines into merely average ones. First, the metallurgy compromise. Japanese manufacturers abandoned proprietary aluminum alloys for cheaper recycled pot metal alternatives. The original alloys were developed through decades of research and contained precise mixtures of silicon, magnesium, and other elements to maximize strength while minimizing thermal expansion. High-pressure die casting methods were replaced with standard Western techniques, increasing porosity and microfractures in critical components. Connecting rods and crankcases began using recycled materials that fail after 50,000 heat cycles instead of the 300,000 plus cycles the original alloys could withstand. The contrast was stark. You could find original Honda CB750 engines from the 1970s still running perfectly after 45 years, while modern engines were requiring complete rebuilds after just 8 to 10 years of use. The metallurgical compromise alone reduced engine lifespan by approximately 40%. Second, the tolerance stack disaster. Japanese engineering had always emphasized tighter than necessary clearances, building components to tolerances far more precise than required. This approach created a massive safety margin that accommodated wear over decades of use. The shift to good enough specifications destroyed this long-term reliability. Mean piston speed calculations, a critical factor in determining engine longevity, were ignored in favor of marketing-friendly displacement and horsepower numbers. Ring wear and cylinder ovalization became primary failure modes instead of the rare occurrences they had been in previous generations. The abandonment of JIS fasteners for standard Western bolts had particularly severe consequences. JIS fasteners were specifically designed to maintain torque under vibration, while standard bolts gradually loosen over time. This created systematic loosening and component failure in high vibration areas of the engine and chassis. Third, the maintenance protocol abandonment. The original Japanese maintenance philosophy was built around preventing problems rather than fixing them. Brake and oil change intervals of 50, 200, and 600 miles were designed to remove metal particles from initial wear before they could damage bearings. This protocol was abandoned in favor of a single 600-mile service. Valve clearance inspection intervals pushed beyond safe limits reduced the perceived maintenance burden, but guaranteed premature valve seat wear. Cooling systems optimized for test conditions rather than real-world traffic created systematic overheating issues. The electrical system faced similar cost-cutting, creating the now infamous stator and rectifier failures that plague modern Japanese motorcycles after warranty expiration. Components that once lasted the lifetime of the vehicle now required replacement every 25,000 to 30,000 miles. These technical compromises transformed machines that had been engineered to run virtually forever into disposable consumer products with limited lifespans. The Japanese motorcycle industry had abandoned its foundational principles in pursuit of Western market share, and both the companies and their customers were paying the price. Despite this industry-wide shift, A small but dedicated group of Japanese motorcycle owners have achieved the seemingly impossible, 300,000 plus miles on their machines by following the original 1970s to 1990s maintenance protocols. Independent mechanics have been rediscovering these lost techniques that prevent premature failures and sharing them through forums and videos. This has created an interesting market dynamic where classic Japanese motorcycles from the 1980s and 1990s now command premium prices due to their superior engineering compared to modern equivalents. A well-maintained 1990 Honda CB750 might sell for more than a 2015 model with similar mileage, a stunning reversal of normal depreciation patterns. The real lesson here extends beyond motorcycles to the entire manufacturing sector. Engineering excellence cannot be compromised for market positioning without destroying the foundation that created success in the first place. Consumer education about the true cost of ownership proves more valuable than marketing promises of reduced maintenance. Perhaps most importantly, we've learned that institutional knowledge and craftsman culture, once lost, requires decades to rebuild. The engineers who created the Japanese motorcycle empire understood something fundamental about the relationship between maintenance, materials, and longevity, a knowledge base that was systematically dismantled in pursuit of short-term profits. So where does this leave the average motorcycle owner? With an opportunity. By understanding and implementing the original Japanese maintenance protocols, you can extend the life of your motorcycle far beyond what the manufacturer currently expects. Those classic Japanese engineering principles never actually disappeared. They were just deprioritized. The metallurgy may have changed, the tolerances may have loosened, but the fundamental approach to maintenance that made these machines legendary still works. Frequent oil changes, regular valve adjustments, proper break-in procedures, and attention to cooling system maintenance can transform even a modern Japanese motorcycle into a machine that will last decades instead of years. The Japanese motorcycle empire wasn't built on marketing or styling. It was built on machines that simply refused to die when properly maintained. That legacy is still within reach for riders willing to learn the secrets that have been gradually obscured by modern consumer culture. Japanese motorcycle manufacturers changed the world by proving that exceptional engineering could be accessible to everyone. The question now is whether they'll reclaim that heritage or continue down the path of planned obsolescence. Until they decide, the responsibility falls to us, the riders and mechanics who still believe that a properly maintained motorcycle should last a lifetime. The Japanese motorcycle maintenance secret isn't really a secret at all. It's simply a commitment to doing things right, even when marketing departments and profit margins push in the opposite direction. In an age of disposable everything, that might be the most revolutionary idea of all. Today, we've exposed how Japanese engineering excellence was sacrificed for market share. Once legendary motorcycles now fail at 60,000 miles instead of 300,000. The data reveals how metallurgical compromises, tolerance stack failures, and abandoned maintenance protocols transform bulletproof bikes into disposable products. Is your motorcycle doomed to premature failure, or can these original maintenance secrets save it? Manufacturers don't want you questioning their engineered obsolescence. Comment whether you'll stick with dealer recommendations or adopt these Japanese protocols. Subscribe before your next oil change. What we reveal next might save your engine.